Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pathways to Family Wellness podcast. My name is Dr. Brendan Riordan, pediatric and family chiropractor. Joining me today, we've got a special guest, Dr. Stephanie Libs, who is actually a classmate of mine back from our days at Life West. So, Steph, so glad to have you here. Really glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I know we go so far back.
Yeah, like
Day one of chiropractic school, you
15
and me.
years. Yeah, no, this is awesome. So, Steph's someone I've been wanting to get on the, you okay if we just say Steph, nice and casual? Is that all right,
Yes,
right for this?
please,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. I've been wanting to have her on the podcast for a long time here. She brings a very unique skill set. So I'm going to go ahead and read some of her bio so we can understand a little bit more about her, what she does here. So Stephanie Libs, DC, CACCP, it's a certification in chiropractic pediatrics, is a pediatric and prenatal chiropractor and lactation consultant in San Diego. She's a mother of two beautiful babies, and drawing on the experience of her own breastfeeding struggles and helping thousands of families, has developed multiple courses to help chiropractors and moms with their breastfeeding journey. And you can find her online at drstephlibs.com. And Steph, again, I appreciate having you here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks.
So I'm wondering, just to start with some of your own journey, would you be willing to kind of share how, I guess, how you arrived at where you are? I always love getting the backstory. I think it's always fun to get those details. So you can share with us
Yeah,
what
for
you went
sure.
through.
I agree. I always love hearing people's origin stories, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll kind of give a brief rundown of like my births and breastfeeding journeys and I guess how it's like related to my practice and the families that I see now. And forgive me, I lost my voice over the weekend, so it's just coming back, but I
Yeah.
sound
That makes two
raspy.
of us, so this will be good. All right.
Okay, good. We'll have a sexy conversation here.
Yeah. All right.
Um, so, um, okay, so I've got two kids. It actually kind of started, my husband and I got married and we were pregnant at our wedding. And we announced and surprised everybody at our wedding that we were pregnant. And it was like this beautiful announcement. It's, huge wedding, just like the classic big wedding thing. And surprised everybody, even our parents. And we were so excited, and I like just knew. I knew the second I got pregnant. It just like felt that spark of like knowing that there was a baby coming for me. And 2 days after our wedding, I started spotting, bleeding got heavier, ended up having a miscarriage, and it was so incredibly crushing. And because I was like so public at our wedding about
Yeah.
getting pregnant, it was so public and it was on social media and everybody was congratulating me all while I'm like, grieving and bleeding and laying in a pile of blood.
Yeah.
So I was really public about that experience and shared that I miscarried. And, I got a few comments of like, well, why would you share? That was too soon to share. And almost a little bit of like, you did this to yourself kind of thing, which was really hurtful,
Yeah.
hearing that kind of feedback. But the overwhelming majority of the feedback was um, people sharing that it had happened to them maybe multiple times. And it was coming from all sorts of people, coming from people in my community, other chiropractors. And because a big part of me felt like I'm a chiropractor, I'm supposed to have this like natural birth experience. This is supposed to
Mhm.
be easy for me. I'm really healthy. It was the healthiest I'd been in my life. And I just felt like something in me was broken. Like why couldn't I get pregnant and keep a pregnancy? But that experience of being so public about it was actually incredibly healing. And it was a big lesson for me of like, wow, like when you really call on your community, they show up for you. Um, and vice versa, you show up for them. So that was like a really big healing experience, having people
Yeah.
really come out of the woodworks. And then I realized how common of an experience that really was and how many women go through that. At least 25% of women go through some sort of loss. And so I realized how prevalent that was.
Yep.
So that was kind of lesson number one. Then fast forward, got pregnant a couple months later with my first daughter, my first child, and planned a home birth with her. Went into labor, was planning this home birth, and it went on for days and days and days. And at the 3 day mark, literally at 71 hours, I called it. I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I need drugs. I need some medical intervention here because this is hard and I'm not progressing and like there's some sort of blockage. So We ended up having a medicated birth in the hospital. Our midwife came with us, was really a strong advocate for us. Um, that's a whole story in itself of like the OB was trying to bully us into a C-section and
Yeah.
telling us that our baby was going to die, even though there were absolutely no signs of distress, and that I was sure going to have shoulder dystocia. I didn't have shoulder dystocia. She swore I had a 10-pound baby. She was 7 pounds, 3 ounces, like all this crazy stuff. Um, Ended up having a vaginal delivery after really having to fight for it. But because it was a highly medicated labor, we had a lot of struggles breastfeeding,
Yep.
and it was really painful. It was really difficult in those first couple weeks, and the only reason we got through it and like didn't go to a bottle or didn't go to formula was because I had so much support from our midwives and our community, and lots of people who rallied around me to help with every step of breastfeeding. Even my mom, who like barely breastfed but is like my best friend, was over making lactation cookies. And that sounds like nothing, but like my mom's never made cookies in her life. And she came over and made cookies. So like it really was like all hands on deck. Um, and so fast forward again to my second birth. For the birth of my son was a very straightforward 12-hour home birth. My husband caught him over the toilet. We were back in bed within minutes. Breastfed like a champ. It was easy and smooth sailing. And because of all the work we had done with my first after the struggles of my breastfeeding,
Mm-hmm.
I continued to breastfeed her through my pregnancy, and then I tandem nursed both my babies for about a year. And so the only reason why I got through any of that was because of the immense amount of support
Yes.
from other chiropractors. When I couldn't, very often I couldn't adjust my own babies. It like my brain would like shut off. So like my community of other chiropractors would help adjust my babies. And for that, I'm like forever grateful. But so that's kind of long
Yeah.
story,
Yes.
origin story of like that led to me wanting to just really show up bigger for my community, because my personal experiences were like, whoa, this is so incredibly challenging.
Yep.
And the only reason I got through it was with support. And then
Mm-hmm.
I would see all these other families come in with just wild struggles and maybe not as much support as I had and still make it through.
Yeah.
But then I saw all these breastfeeding challenges and I realized I really want to know a lot more and like really dive into breastfeeding, because this is such a challenging part for so many families. And so I did a little more training, and then I learned about the IBCLC program to become an international board certified lactation consultant, and decided to go down that path because I feel like it married in with our chiropractic profession so well. And now my office is really the hub in the community for breastfeeding support.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I see that. I agree with you. I see that as probably the single most important variable in terms of like success versus not success is just the support through the process, right? I mean that at at
Yeah.
any given time, if those support legs had fallen out, it would have probably gone a very different direction, don't you think, in terms of like how that would have looked?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think it's so crazy that in the typical obstetric model, it's like women go in and have their babies and then they have their 6-week checkup and
Yeah.
nothing in between.
And well, and even after that, like, all right, you're good to go. 12
Right.
weeks, 12 weeks, you're back to work, and like, whoa,
Yeah.
it is. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're doing, as a culture, we're doing better in terms of prenatal care overall. We're doing like there's still a
Right.
long ways to go, but we're doing better. But the wheels still really fall off postpartum, and I can tell you're really passionate about, and I know we are in our practice as well, about like staying in touch and making sure everyone has the support they need. Because
Right.
you can see it with those first time parents, just like, yeah, the deer in headlights. They're like, there's just so much
Oh my gosh.
information to sort out. They're just, you know, trying to trust the people around them as best they can. But maybe
Right.
some of those people aren't giving them. I mean, you had the right kind of support as well. I think that's so important as well, right? To have the
Yeah.
support that was in line with what you were saying. If you had a bunch of people around saying like, "Oh, Steph, you need to sleep," like throw in the towel, like
Right.
don't worry about that breastfeeding thing, like here's a bottle of formula, and that's not a judgment in any way, but it's so easy. It's so easy to make that choice if that's offered. And so, you were very committed to like, this is how we're going to do this. I think
Right.
with less
Yes. And I
resolve and,
think
and a different kind of support, it might have gone a different direction.
exactly. And I think the thing too is like when we know more, we do better, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that breastfeeding especially is something that is so not valued in this society. And really, if we had better breastfeeding rates, we would have crazy changes in society, in health, in economy. Like we know that babies who are breastfed longer have better high school attendance and then have higher income later in life.
Isn't that incredible? Like,
Because they're less sick, their brain's working better.
I mean, I think that's amazing that some of that research has been done. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
That like, those variables were fleshed out to say like, this is, we're gonna really we're gonna really dial this in and see like. Now, I'm curious with something like that, was there a time frame that was optimal where they say, oh, these for like the ones that end up having a higher rate of finishing high school and having a higher income, was it, did it matter how long they were breastfed? Or was it just breastfed for some amount of time?
Yes, and I cannot remember the exact stats. I've got them
Yeah,
somewhere. There are a whole bunch of outcome measures that have been looked
yeah,
at, and a lot of them relate to length of time breastfeeding. So,
yes,
was it 6 months? Was it a year? Was it 2 years? But what's interesting too is like, you mentioned if someone didn't have that support, like, it's easy to just like, let's do a bottle. And the thing is, like, that's really an easy, that's a really easy solution for the short term right now.
yes,
But then when we look at all these other outcomes, it's like, actually, if we can get someone the right support in the beginning and support them to breastfeed for a longer period of time, that would change the world.
yeah,
I know that sounds like lofty, but it would change the world. And even organizations, I don't love all these big three-letter organizations, but CDC, the WHO, even they say the standard for breastfeeding should be at least 24 months and beyond.
yep,
At least 24 months. That's what they even say.
yep,
And so, if those organizations are even recognizing the value of breastfeeding for, at least 2 years or more, like there's something to that.
yeah,
We know that there's major immune markers, and the composition of breast milk changes so much. But the thing is, it all starts with birth.
yep,
It totally starts with birth and pregnancy and how that woman is taken care of and how her birth is, and then how to navigate it too.
yeah,
You
precisely.
know?
Well, and that's
Yeah.
where something that you had emailed me before that sounded like really fascinating to talk about is how different interventions can interfere with that continuum of the prenatal to the birth process to the breastfeeding journey, and how that affects things later on in life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to
So
unpack that a little bit, or some examples
for
of how
sure.
you've seen that go a variety of different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is something that I wish was just more highly recognized is the continuum of
Yes.
birth, labor, breastfeeding, and raising our children, because it really is a continuum. It's all, I really think like how we view things in one aspect is going to carry through all those other aspects as well. So, the things that we do in labor really can affect breastfeeding and then long-term outcomes. For instance, things like pitocin can
Hmm.
dampen a baby's suck reflex. An epidural is going to reduce babies' neurobehavior, meaning that their ability to move their body and crawl onto the breast and latch on. IV fluids are going to inflate the baby and inflate the breast. So the baby's going to lose a bunch of weight because they're peeing out all that fluid. It's not actual weight loss in the first, day or so. So then all of a sudden they've lost too much weight and, they need to supplement with formula when maybe that's not actually true.
Is that, if you mind, I jump in a little bit, because I remember you
Yeah.
sharing that in an article years
Yeah.
ago in Pathways, and I thought that was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, is that readily acknowledged in the hospital system that that's a phenomena that occurs? Okay.
Not at
Because
all. Not
it
at all.
seems so obvious when you say it. You're like, well, of
Right.
course,
Of
right?
course. Right.
So like it seems like that would be something that, so instead of like saying a baby's failure to thrive, or like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
quick, we got to like supplement ASAP with some formula in addition to breast milk, which again can interfere with the relationship. So I guess how's a parent to navigate that, if you mind, if we take a little detour on that,
For
for that
sure. For
specific
sure. Yeah.
point, right? That's
Yes. And I feel, each of these, interventions in labor, we could detour on each of them because
yeah.
they're so profound. So for instance, with an IV, we know, and there is that article on Pathways that I wrote that unpacks it even more. But we know that the more fluid given in labor, the more fluid the baby will absorb. So if they come out and they're, let's say 8 pounds, hospital staff typically, and other staff too, maybe midwives and lactation consultants, don't want to see babies lose more than 10% of their weight.
Mm-hmm.
So if that baby loses, you know, 10, 12, maybe 15%, then that staff is going to get concerned and say you need to supplement, maybe you need to pump, maybe do formula, maybe donor milk. So
Yep.
there's a couple issues with that. One, baby's gut in the first couple days is really only intended to get colostrum, and it's like drops of colostrum.
Mm-hmm.
That colostrum, for listeners who might not know, is that first milk that comes in. It's super high in protein, and it also helps to line the gut and push out all that meconium, which is that tar-like poop that lines our intestine to keep it inflated. So that colostrum is designed to push out that meconium and really prime the gut for their microbiome going forward. We introduce formula. That's going to disturb that microbiome. We introduce donor milk. That could disturb it too, because the baby's not supposed to have a high volume and full on milk in those first couple of days. But they're so worried about baby gaining enough weight that they just want to pack on the weight, when that's actually can really interfere with the body's natural digestive and immune process.
Yeah.
Not to mention the size of their stomach is so small, right? So like the size of the stomach on day 1 is like the size of a cherry or something. Day 2 is like a walnut, so it's teeny, teeny, tiny. If we introduce this huge bolus, this huge amount of volume of donor milk or formula, even that, the baby's going to not get used to that. And then what happens now in the stomach, we have those stretch receptors that indicate to the brain satiation. Now we're stretching those so full, and then baby's gonna need a bigger bolus of food every time. So then it sets up mom to fail, because maybe her body cannot produce, 5 ounces in one feed.
Yeah.
Which is normal. She shouldn't have to produce 5 ounces in one feed, but that's what we've primed the baby to get used to.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you think about the amount of people that have compromised guts, you just have to wonder, like, is
Right.
this one of the major causes of all these compromised guts and hence compromised immune
Yes.
systems,
Right.
compromised
I
nervous
wonder that
system
all the
function,
time.
yeah.
I wonder that all the time, and that's one thing I'm sure you asked this too in your initial consult with adults, is like, how's your digestive system?
Oh yeah.
How many people are like, well, I can't eat this or that, this or that, this or that.
Probably
I
50%, I'd say, like, maybe
yeah,
right around there. Yeah.
been diagnosed with IBS or whatever it is. And it's like, maybe your gut was irritated from the start.
Right, right.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. That's
So yeah, it's
fascinating.
interesting. I wonder that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's with the right support in place, again, we can, these things can be mitigated. But even just that single point of the fluid, it's like that requires knowledge and then advocacy.
Yes. And this is something that I tell moms all the time when if I know they're having a hospital birth, I say, okay, here's what you need to know about an IV, because an IV seems like such a benign thing
Yeah.
that, it's just fluid. Like, why would it cause any sort
Stay
of issue?
hydrated, get your electrolytes, right? I mean, this is like great.
It
Yeah.
seems like a great idea, but I
Yeah.
see this pattern over and over and over again, and baby loses too much weight. So what I tell them is, make sure you get baby's weight at 24 hours old
Mm,
or around there, because in that first 24 hours is when they are going to eliminate a lot of that fluid. So the 24-hour weight is probably more accurate to their actual birth weight had you not had all the fluid.
yep.
I tell them, take the 24-hour weight, and then we take the weight loss from there.
Yep.
If that exceeds 10%, okay, then maybe we get concerned. Maybe we do something. But 99% of the time, with that 24-hour weight, and then we take their weight loss, they're well within normal range.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So do you know, this actually isn't something I know about. Do you know what the common times that weights are taken, like immediately after a baby's born in the hospital?
Yeah, so they typically do it sometime in the first hour,
Yep.
and then they will usually do a 24-hour wait,
Yeah.
maybe sooner, but they don't always tell the parents what that 24-hour wait is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it might go in the chart. They'll it depends on like what's going on, how long the family's in the hospital. So they'll usually weigh before they leave the hospital as well.
Yep.
So I think it really just depends. But
Yep.
I always tell families like just take a note of what that weight
Right.
is.
Right.
And if they're pressuring you to supplement, then just call me. You're still in the hospital, just call me and let's
Yep.
navigate it. Yeah.
Well, and another point, maybe you're going to get to this, is like if the birth process is very stressful, mom's got an elevated sympathetic tone, so basically elevated stress response, which is going to decrease prolactin and other things like that. So, that,
Right.
I guess under those circumstances, what would be like the expectation or more the way that moms can work through that or work around that?
Yeah. So that's a really good point too, because I mean, we think about like being in your space where like you feel good and relaxed and you are comfortable, like that's a place where you can make milk. But if you already have this high stress from the birth, you're under these monitors and bright lights and
Yeah.
someone checking in on you every 5 seconds, and then you're in your postpartum room and someone's coming in every hour making sure you're not sleeping with the baby, and it's like that's the time you really need to rest. So we have all these things. It's like, of course, their stress is elevated. It's like your body cannot grow and adapt and thrive in a super stressful environment. So that's certainly tricky. And then if you add medication to that, like I mentioned, pitocin can decrease a baby's ability to suck.
Mm-hmm.
Epidural decrease their neurobehavior scores. The thing is with all of these interventions, they all have been shown to resolve by 6 weeks.
Okay.
When is the hardest time for breastfeeding, and when's the period of time where most moms give up or stop breastfeeding? In the first 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So even just for moms to know this, that sometimes it can take up to 6 weeks for the
Yep.
baby's body to really clear up the effects of the medication, but it will resolve. And most of the time it resolves a lot faster with chiropractic care.
Yes.
By the way, um,
Amen.
usually,
Yeah.
usually we can get these babies over that hump a lot faster than the
Oh
six
yeah.
weeks, right? We see that all the time
Oh
in
yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
But at least if they know that, they're going in empowered. And even if I have a mom who like is planning a medicated birth, I'm like, great, no problem. You're gonna have a great birth. You're gonna, whatever it may be. And here's how to navigate the
Mm-hmm.
breastfeeding.
Well, and then there's the mechanics of the latch itself, right? So there's so many factors to it, and especially if a mom's never breastfed before, and it's not like she grew up in a household where all the moms are getting together like, come here, honey, let me show you, how this is going to go down. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's such a good point because like the way humanity has existed has been from living in these communities, the tribes, the clans,
Yeah.
the that really like tight communal thing. And we don't have that anymore. And we have these really isolated family units. And it's just not how humanity is meant to survive. And
Yeah.
that's one reason I really have tried to make my office not just an office but a community
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
a very like loungy space where people can come and hang out and breastfeed their babies together and see other moms do it. Babies see other babies do it because we have mirror neurons,
Yeah.
right? If
Yeah.
we want, babies see another baby do it, they're going to learn how to do it. So I think and I know your practice is like that too, like
Yes.
it's not just an office where you come and have this transaction. It's a community, and that's by design because we lack that
Yep.
when we should have that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see it a lot, the amount of conversations that come up, and then a friendship pops up from that, or someone that, there's a connection is made. And yeah.
Right.
The mirror neurons, that's cool though.
Yeah, so that's something we do. We have a breastfeeding support group at my office every Monday, and we have a whole team of lactation crew who come, and we have RNs and speech language pathologists and OTs and IBCLCs and midwives. So it's a really cool group because we've got so many different eyes and lenses on what's going on and supporting
Yeah.
these how to
Yeah.
feed. But one of the best things about it is I'll have babies or, I'll have families come who the baby's having trouble latching or whatever it may be. And I'm like, just come to the group. and have your baby watch the other babies because they'll learn how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like how do monkeys know how to breastfeed? They don't have words. I mean, they have communication, you know.
Yeah.
They see the other monkeys doing it. And that's how they learn.
Yeah. Those innate skills. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like
Yeah.
Jeannie had a story about that with the chickens that I'm trying to recall the specifics of, but as Jeannie was with all the chickens that are at her house, and the ones that were natural born eggs from chicks who had the eggs hatch the eggs on their own, would those the chicks from those eggs that hatched would then sit on their eggs. It's like there was inborn in them to sit on the eggs.
Right.
When they laid eggs themselves, they would sit on the egg until the egg would hatch. But the chicks that
Right.
were born via the like an incubator, basically like the incubator one, so she had a few of those as well, that were chicks that were born that way, did not have the instinct to sit on the eggs, and only learned by looking at the other chickens who were sitting on the eggs that sitting on the egg was the thing you were supposed to do. So it was almost like her example was that like the more steps that we remove ourselves from nature, the less those instincts are going to carry on from generation to generation, right? And so,
Right. Absolutely. And
yeah.
you know, she was so profound in so many things that she said. And one thing she said, I might get this a little bit wrong, but something along the lines of, we are epigenetically forgetting how to give birth because it's so not, you know, like so much of what we do in humanity is like we learn through story and telling story and
Yeah.
passing down these stories and these ways of doing things. And so in a way, it's like we're getting, like you said,
Mhm.
so far removed from nature, we're forgetting how to do it. And so I'm going to add to that and say, I think we're epigenetically forgetting how to breastfeed
Yeah.
because we don't see our moms, our aunties, our cousins
Yeah.
doing it. And so we have to like start from scratch.
Right.
But the good thing is, I think now people want it. And I think
Yep.
our rates of, you know, at least breastfeeding initiation have really climbed, um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which is great. It's really
Yeah.
great.
I think the pendulum's swinging back. It's at least it seems that way to me as well, right? You get
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
people. I mean, the midwives at the hospital are busier than ever because people are wanting like that experience of like being, home births are more popular than ever.
Right.
Breastfeeding is more popular than ever. It's weird that it should be popular, but it's like these things are, I think people are really understanding the value that is, right? That like, that
Yeah.
when it comes to natural processes like this, technology can take us so far, but that's not really what this is about.
For sure. And you know, you mentioned the technology thing, which I think is so interesting because there are I'm going to sidetrack a little bit, but there are so
Mhm.
many things in motherhood or in parenting in general that we're sold. So many gimmicks and gadgets and gizmos and
Mhm.
like all these things to track your baby and track your cycle and track this and put this monitor on them. And it's like, man, what if we like got rid of all that and just reconnected?
Mhm.
We're
Community.
sold
Yeah.
community, but even just like mom and baby, like we're sold so many things that disconnect us. You know, get this carrier, get this bassinet, get this crib, get this container to hold your baby. And it's like, no, we should be holding our babies.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but we're told that that's inconvenient and you shouldn't
Right.
do that
Right.
and you can't hold the baby too much. Like last I checked, you can't overlove a baby.
Yeah.
I don't know. Last I checked.
Not possible. Not happening. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in terms of other things that might from the continuum of like interfere that I know we'd
Yeah.
you know spent some time for the fluids. Are there other ways where you see, like the stressful experience, the epidural, pitocin, what are some
Yes.
other ways that things can kind of get thrown off track there, and
Yes.
how to bring
So
that back on track?
yeah. So one of the most important things that I'd like to share is the breast crawl, which a
Yes.
lot of people are not familiar with and don't know about. But I think it is one of the most magical things. And even if you have a medicated birth, you can still do this. It might be a little trickier. You can always recreate it later, but
Hmm.
the breast crawl. And what it is once babies are born, they can go right onto your chest, or C-section, they can go up to your shoulder. And babies have all the innate mechanisms to literally crawl and push with their feet and crawl with their hands to get to the breast and latch on.
That's amazing, right?
It's like mind blowing. And it is like sometimes I tell people this, they don't believe me. I'm like, I swear this is a thing. Babies have reflexes and that makes them look like
Yep.
they're crawling. Um, and the reason for that, like, it's such a beautiful design. If you just step back and you're like, wow, like that is such a cool design. And then there's evidence that the linea nigra, which is when mom's bellies grow, sometimes they get that darker line up the
Hmm.
belly, is like a roadmap of which direction for baby to start crawling, right?
Could
The
be.
area,
Yeah.
right? The areola darkens in color,
Yeah.
hyperpigmented. And so it's easier for baby to see. And then when baby is latched on, they can see a perfect distance, about 8 to 10, maybe 12 inches from their face. Perfect distance from breast to look at mom's face. That's about
Amazing.
8 inches. Like, it's so amazing. Like, how can you see that and not be like, wow, this
Yeah.
is a crazy beautiful design, like so intelligent. So the breast crawl. So we allow babies to crawl themselves onto the breast. They don't need a lot of help doing it. And we know that if moms can get a good latch in the first hour of birth, it really sets up her trajectory for breastfeeding, I'll
Yep.
quote, success going forward. That looks like higher supply for the entirety of her breastfeeding journey, a more comfortable latch. So I always like to share that. Now, sometimes if it's a highly medicated labor or a C-section, it can be really hard to do that because you don't want baby, kicking on your belly when you have a C-section. But
Yep.
you can do it from up here, you can do it from the side. You can have them activate those movements on the partner, skin to skin. You can have them do that too. Um, and then you can always recreate that later as well because the babies will hold on to those reflexes for a little while. So I always like to empower moms for that. The other thing that's cool about it too is if it's a vaginal delivery, the baby pushing their feet on the uterus is going to help clamp that uterus back down
Oh, that's amazing.
and help prevent hemorrhage, which is
Yeah.
so cool.
Those little feet helping out. That's
Little feet
adorable.
are
And at every step of the process, it seems like there's so much evidence of wisdom and intelligence in there. Like at no point,
great.
do you see like, oh, that baby just accidentally crawled as a newborn up my
Right.
body. Like that's no,
On an accident.
yeah, they slipped up. Yeah.
Right. They slipped up.
Yeah.
Woo.
No, with our
Yeah.
with our first, it was amazing. He was born in the water and he kicked his little legs to bring himself up out of the water. And it was like his like early crawl that way. Like he was kicking
Right.
before he was breathing. He hadn't even taken his first breath and his little legs were kicking to like push himself up onto my wife's belly so then he could like move himself up to the breast. It's like pretty
Right.
amazing. Yeah.
It's so amazing. It's so amazing. And, like you said, it's all those little things that are just evidence of the wisdom of the body. And
Hmm.
like, I just wish everyone who worked anywhere in the realm of birth and parenting could respect those little things,
Yeah.
those little signs of evidence. Like, just look at that and have respect for the process of how beautiful and intelligent that design is. And if you could just step back and have that respect, I think it would change so much of how we treat,
Yeah.
moms and women and babies in this country.
There'd certainly be less tinkering. That's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Like,
Now with a surgical birth, do you see there being a little bit of a lag in terms of like the way that some of those chemicals might allow for like a normal breastfeeding to occur?
yes, of
Like would
course.
you almost
So,
adjust your time frame if that were, if that were the
yes.
case? Yeah.
Yes. So with a surgical birth, you can have, just that colostrum for up to 10 days. Could take
Yep.
up to 10 days for your milk to come in.
Yep.
That doesn't mean baby's not getting anything. They're still getting that super protective colostrum, which I think is even more important with a surgical birth because
Yep.
um, then that baby's getting even more protected because they might have missed out on some of that exposure to the vaginal flora, which primes their immune system as well.
Hmm.
So I think it is, you know, again by design that the body is just taking a little bit longer
Yeah.
to create that volume of milk. And if mom's still stuck in that state of stress, that fight or flight, that might be a little more challenging for the milk to come in. So try and integrate lots of ways of like bringing those stress levels down, getting
Yep.
her as, relaxed as possible I watched a really beautiful documentary recently called Birth Time, out of Australia, and
Mhm.
you can go online and buy it. It's really, really good. But it showed a mother who was planning a vaginal birth, ended up with a C-section, and she was empowered through it, but it was also very difficult for her. And so what they did was a couple weeks later, once she was healed, they recreated they did baby's first bath in a home birth setting. So they blew up the birth pool, filled it up, made it look like she was in labor, and kind of recreated that home water birth experience.
Yeah.
And that was the baby's first bath. And for her, she talked about it being like such a healing experience of, kind of sealing that birth and
Yeah.
feeling complete, and like how beautiful is that to, maybe she didn't get the birth that she wanted, but created a ceremony around healing, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. Right after this, when we're done, I'm going to be speaking with Jay Warren about imprints and things. So it's going to be super, Dr.
I
Jay is
love
super
Jay Warren.
fascinating. But like that, that we hear a lot about like rebirthing or something of that nature.
Yeah,
So it's almost like I'm sure there was some type of a charge around that experience that was interfering with the relationship in some way. And like an experience like that would really help to neutralize some or like integrate the charge of that experience and to be able to like have that be a more just to integrate it and move into a healthier relationship. That's a beautiful thing to do.
right.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh gosh, I'm so glad you're talking to Jay Warren. I absolutely love him. I'm sure you'll intro him and everything, but he is a fantastic chiropractor here in my community. He's like
Yes. Another good
30
San
minutes
Diego
away
one.
from me.
Yeah, totally.
And I just love his work. He's done all this work with APA, which is American Prenatal Perinatal Psychology Health Alliance, I think.
Hmm.
And yeah, just talking about imprinting and like what we experience and how that imprints onto babies and how to navigate through that is just, it's like so cool. And it lines up so well with chiropractic, because that's what we do with chiropractic, is make your nervous system more adaptable,
Yeah.
because everybody's going to be exposed to stress.
Yep.
Everybody is.
Yep.
It's about how well you can
Yeah.
adapt to that,
Yep.
and what chiropractic does, makes your nervous system more adaptable. So I
Absolutely.
absolutely love his work. He's so brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and to bring it full circle to one of the pieces earlier about support, right? Like that, especially with your own story, with the folks in your community, it seems like you've done such a good job of making it be offering that support for people. So like on every Monday night, folks can show up and they know there's going to be that support there. Um,
Right.
are there ways you'd recommend for like folks living in other spots, like where to find that support, where to look, how
Yeah,
can they, how to be a part of a community?
for sure. Well, I just plug in my laptop because I just realized my battery's about to die. So I would actually encourage if there are any chiropractors listening, start a support group in your office.
Yep.
So for the chiropractors out there, I think that's one of the best things you can do. Make your office a hub and like the place to go for support for these new moms, because it's so needed, so lacking in most communities. Um,
And
for
I bet it's fun too, right? I mean, it's like everyone just gets together.
so fun.
It's like a party, but there's like professionals there that can also help you out. I'm sure it's a good
It
time.
is, it is so fun. Mondays
Yeah.
are my favorite day of the week.
Yeah.
And it's really grown. Like when I started it, the first week, it was exciting and we had like 10 people there. And then the second week was like two, and then there was like five, and then there was nobody,
Yeah.
and like, but because we stayed committed to it and we're consistent, now every week it is packed. Like
Wow.
there's a surface of floor or seating that is not taken. Um,
Amazing.
it's awesome. And there are so many professionals in the community who are begging me to come in and be part of it. So very selective of who we let in.
Yeah.
We've got a killer staff. So I would definitely encourage any chiropractors listening, start it. You can reach out to me. I'll help you, tell you what to do. But it's really very simple. I don't really have an agenda, and we do introductions, and these moms get to know each other. It's just brilliant. And then for those of you listening who are maybe looking for something like that, reach out to your local chiropractor
Yep.
and see if they have a group. Maybe they don't have a group. Maybe they have a Pathways Connect group. Maybe they have
Yep.
something. So reach out to your local chiropractor. Go to icp4kids.com or .org and click find a chiropractor, and then find someone in the community who, those are the chiropractors that have this training
Yep.
that are going to be the most equipped to help you. If they don't host a group in their office, they probably know where there is a group. And then if your chiropractor doesn't have a group, find other breastfeeding support groups in your community, or other sorts of meetups.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
um, and then online communities too. I mean,
Yep.
I think it's really great to have some support, and that's one thing that I think social media and Facebook especially is really good for, is the groups.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
when I was breastfeeding through a pregnancy, I had a lot of people who were like, that's not safe, you shouldn't be doing that. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's safe, I'm fine.
Mhm.
And I was fine and cleared with my midwife and all those things. But I joined a support group that was called, I think, tandem breastfeeding and breastfeeding through pregnancy,
Perfect. Yep.
something. Yeah, it was like very specific. I was like, great, I'm going to be in this group. I'm going to
Yep.
hear from these other moms what they're going through, and it's just finding those like-minded people
Yep.
who are on your same page. So I would say, find one, your pediatric chiropractor.
Yes.
2, some sort of local community meetup group, support group, something. And 3, the online space.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, Steph, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with before we go, or other ways folks can connect with you and your work?
Well, I'm very active on social media. You can find me on there. Dr.
Yep.
Steph Libs is my handle on Instagram. And
Awesome.
I put a lot of stuff out on birth and pregnancy and informed choice and things like that. But I think just the biggest message that I want to leave, because I feel like I have this conversation multiple times a day in my practice, is just helping moms step into their own power. And rather than listening to all the outside voices of what your baby should do or what you should do, or
Yeah.
this or that, like, what are ways that you can reconnect to yourself and know from a place of empowerment that what you're doing is the right thing, and not need external validation. And that's in every arena, whether it's like having an app to check our cycle, like how can you check your own cervix and know where you are in your cycle, right? Or like knowing if you're even pregnant or not. Like, do you really need to pee on a stick? I mean, it's fine if you do, no judgment, but like, you'll know you're pregnant if you really tap in and tune into yourself. Um, you know, Even what's going on with my baby? Is my baby okay? Are they gaining enough weight? How would you know if you don't have a pediatrician, if you lived out in the jungle? How would you know that you're doing great?
Yeah.
What are some really deep ways that you can connect to your baby and know that you're fine? Like, find that in yourself. That's
That's
it.
great. That's beautiful. I love it. Thanks so much. We could talk for hours. We'll
We
have another
could.
conversation as well. This will be great, but I
Okay.
appreciate you joining us, Steph. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
Of course.